Winter 1942. As the Soviet 11th Guards Division advanced toward the German defensive pocket near Demyansk, one sector of the line appeared strangely quiet. German infantry patrols reported the same thing again and again. One sniper is delaying an entire Soviet regiment. His name never appeared in official Wehrmacht propaganda. He wasn't a decorated celebrity like Matthias Hetzenauer or Josef Allerberger. In fact, most records list him only as Schütze K. Jäger, Bataillon 38, a low-ranking rifleman. But his position overlooked a narrow forest corridor, the only passage suitable for Soviet infantry to break into the German pocket. And in late January, as the Red Army pushed forward, reports began describing a pattern. Advance squads would enter the corridor. A single shot. Squad freezes. Second shot. Entire Soviet platoon forced to withdraw. At first, commanders believed it was a sniper team. Later, they suspected a machine gun nest. But German officers insisted, no, it's one man. His rifle, a standard K98K with a ZF-39 scope. His advantage? Visibility through elevated pines. His method? Systematic, patient, mathematically precise fire. For 2 days, Soviet infantry avoided the corridor entirely. For German commanders, this was enough time to reorganize the battered flank. For the Soviets, it was a mystery. Why can't an entire regiment push through one small forest pass? The answer lay with the unknown sniper who had quietly dug himself into a frozen nest of pine, snow, and perfect visibility. On the morning of the 2nd of February 1942, the Soviet 11th Guards Division prepared its first coordinated attempt to force the forest corridor. Reconnaissance estimated only scattered German infantry ahead, no heavy weapons, no fortified bunkers. Commanders expected resistance, but nothing out of the ordinary. They were wrong. At 8:40, the Soviets sent a forward detachment, 27 men, supported by a light machine gun team. Their mission: identify the sniper, eliminate him, and open the corridor. The moment they entered the clearing, the first shot cracked. A Soviet sergeant dropped instantly. The platoon halted, scanned the tree line, and spread into cover. Another shot. The machine gun assistant collapsed while moving the ammo drum. The gunner tried to reposition. A third shot hit him before he could lie prone. Only one firing position had been detected: high angle, from dense pine branches, far above normal eye level. This confused the Soviet scouts. German snipers rarely positioned themselves 3 to 5 meters up in trees, too exposed, too difficult to escape. But Schütze K had built a small elevated nest days earlier, packing snow around the trunk to create a platform. From there he could see. The only approach route, distances varying between 100 and 260 meters. Sunlight breaking through the corridor behind Soviet troops, giving him clear silhouettes. Soviet doctrine demanded they continue forward. They advanced again. Another shot a squad leader hit in the chest. Not rapid fire, not panicked shooting, just methodical, timed, precision. Every shot, intentional. Within 7 minutes, the Soviet forward detachment pulled back. 5 casualties. 0 visual on the shooter. Soviet officers filed the incident as enemy sniper, elevated, extreme accuracy. And its step at it is wanted to separate, but they underestimated the situation. This was not merely a sniper delaying a patrol. He was halting the advance of an entire division's primary assault route. Acting alone, in a forest, the Soviets could not bypass. They prepared a second attempt, bigger, more forceful. And Schütze K was already adjusting his next firing angles. By the evening of February 2, Soviet commanders concluded that the German sniper was not a minor obstacle, he was a strategic threat. The corridor he guarded was essential for advancing fresh infantry toward the Demyansk pocket. If the sniper held it, the timetable of the entire division collapsed. So the Soviets initiated a counter-sniper operation. Step 1. Deploy Red Army sharpshooters. 2 Soviet snipers from the 11th Guards were assigned. Sergeant Yaroslav Bredov, veteran of Khalkhangol. CPL. Leonid Grishin, newly promoted. Strong eyesight. Their plan: use the afternoon light to pinpoint muzzle flashes or disturbed branches in the tree line. They crawled into flank positions on opposite sides of the corridor and waited for 2 hours. There was nothing, no shots, no movement. Schütze K had anticipated this. He never fired more than 5-6 rounds per engagement, avoiding patterns that counter-snipers relied on. Step 2. Force the sniper to fire. The Soviets sent a small decoy team forward. 3 men moving in a staggered pattern designed to draw the German sniper's fire. They stepped into the corridor. 10 seconds passed. 20. Still nothing. Bredov and Grishin tightened their scopes. Then, a single shot, but not at the decoy team. Instead, Schütze K fired at a lone Soviet observer, positioned far behind the snipers, a man partially exposed at 240 meters. He collapsed instantly. The message was clear: I see all of you. Step 3. Triangulate the position. Bredov thought he detected the origin high in a specific cluster of pines. Grishin disagreed, pointing to a different angle. They waited for a second shot. It came after several long minutes. This time, the bullet struck a Soviet radio man adjusting his receiver. Again, a single round. Again, perfect timing. But that one shot was enough. Grishin whispered. He changes position. Not from tree to tree, but within one tree. And he was correct. Schütze K had carved 3 firing notches around the same pine, each reachable by silent movement across thick branches. This made triangulation nearly impossible. Each shot came from a slightly different angle. Step 4. Attempt a flanking approach. As dusk approached, Grishin crawled 50 meters left to attempt a wide flank, using the shadows for cover. He was halfway through the maneuver when a shot struck a branch just centimeters from his rifle barrel. Not a kill, a warning. It forced him back. The Soviets abandoned the hunt for the day. What is one's with for today? That evening, their report stated: enemy sniper highly trained, exceptional fieldcraft, unusual elevated firing platform, estimated 10-12 confirmed hits. But the real problem was worse. The German sniper was not just surviving, he was controlling the battlefield. By February 3rd, Soviet units prepared a new tactic: attack at night, when visibility favored the advancing infantry and neutralized the elevated sniper's advantage. It was logical, it was standard doctrine, and it failed immediately. 2010. Movement in the dark. A Soviet assault group of 30 men entered the forest corridor under full darkness. No lanterns, no talking, no metal clatter. Their orders were clear: close the distance to 80 meters, find the sniper's tree, eliminate him. Snow muffled their steps. The forest was silent. Then, at 2013, the first Soviet soldier froze. He heard something unusual, a faint scrape high above, like wood shifting under weight. Before he could signal, a shot cracked through the darkness. A single muzzle flash lit the pine canopy. One Soviet rifleman collapsed. The group instinctively dropped to the snow. How was the sniper firing at night? Snipers rarely engaged in full darkness. The risk of revealing position was too high. But Schütze K had improvised a technique learned from another German Jaeger unit. He placed strips of snow-coated birch bark around his nest to reflect minimal moonlight. He aligned his scope using pre-measured distance marks on nearby branches. He memorized the angles of the corridor by day, so at night he didn't need perfect visibility. It wasn't perfect accuracy, but it was enough. 2015 Soviets attempt a rush. Believing the sniper would take time to reposition, the Soviet group attempted a rapid advance. Wrong again. A second shot dropped another soldier as he ran between two spruce trunks. A third shot hit a man trying to set up a Degtyaryov light machine gun. This was no random fire. This was controlled night engagement. Trained and rehearsed. 2017. Panic and miscommunication. The assault group tried to flank, but darkness caused disorientation. The left wing moved too far west. The right wing drifted east and collided with underbrush. Suddenly, the sniper shifted to a new angle, a notch on the opposite side of the tree. Another flash, another casualty. Soviet officers realized they were no longer hunting. They were being hunted. 2019. Soviet withdrawal. After losing 5 men in less than 10 minutes, the Soviets retreated to avoid entering a kill zone they couldn't map. Back at their lines, officers wrote the first alarm-level note about the sniper. Enemy marksman demonstrates unusual night fire capability. Position, elevation, unknown. Recommended artillery suppression. But artillery was limited, and their maps were imprecise. Thus, they had no choice but to attempt a third daytime breakthrough, unaware that the sniper had already improved his nest, rotated his firing angles, and prepared fresh rounds. The corridor remained closed. One man still held back an entire Soviet division. By the morning of February 4, Soviet commanders accepted a hard truth. Infantry tactics had failed, and the German sniper continued to halt movement through the forest corridor. The division could not advance. Timetables collapsed. Reinforcement routes backed up. So the Soviets prepared the next step: artillery neutralization. Target unknown. Fire anyway. The problem was simple. They still didn't know the sniper's exact tree. The forest canopy was dense. The muzzle flashes were too brief. Triangulation attempts had failed. But the Soviets estimated his location to within a rough 50 times 80 meter rectangular zone, enough for indirect fire. At 11:20, the 76 mm field gun crew received the order: suppress probable sniper nest, high angle fire, 10 rounds. Because accuracy was limited, they fired in a ladder pattern, each shell slightly shifted forward and right. 11:24. Shells began falling. The first explosion shook the entire tree line. Snow cascaded from branches. Shrapnel tore bark from pines. The Soviets listened carefully for movement, falling wood, or any sound indicating the sniper had been hit. Nothing. Second, third, fourth shots hit in sequence, walking across the corridor. Still nothing. Shiitsuke's countermeasure. Unbeknownst to the Soviets, the sniper had prepared for artillery days in advance. Using standard Jaeger doctrine, he had 2 escape holes behind the main platform, a short tree-to-tree rope line connecting him to a neighboring pine, a small ground-level fallback pit, camouflaged with pine needles. When the first round landed, he did not flee in panic. He executed a controlled withdrawal, dropped from the platform, slid behind the trunk, crawled down the rope into the neighboring tree, then moved to the fallback pit. It took less than 20 seconds. 11, 26. Final shelling. The last 4 artillery shells hit precisely where the sniper had been an hour earlier. Branches exploded. His old nest shattered completely. Soviet officers noted. Position destroyed. But that was only partially correct. The location was destroyed. The sniper was not. The critical mistake. The Soviets assumed artillery was final. They did not advance immediately to confirm kills. They did not send reconnaissance. They did not fire a second volley. Instead, they redirected focus to regrouping infantry for another push. This gave the German sniper time just enough to return to a new vantage point, higher and slightly farther back. Using his pre-prepared secondary tree, By 1310, he was back in position. At 1317, the Soviets attempted to move forward. A single shot rang out. Another Soviet soldier dropped. And just like that, the Soviets realized the truth. Artillery had failed. The sniper lived. And the forest corridor was still closed. After the failed artillery strike, the Soviet command staff of the 11th Guards Division reached a difficult conclusion. They were no longer dealing with an ordinary marksman. The German sniper had survived counter-sniper teams, engaged targets at night, shifted firing positions within the same tree here, escaped indirect artillery fire, resumed shooting within 2 hours. This forced the Soviets to design a new tactic, a decoy offensive, built specifically to expose his location. Objective: force the sniper to fire at false targets, revealing the angle of his shots. Step 1. Constructing human silhouettes. In the rear, Soviet engineers cut out rifleman-shaped silhouettes from birch planks, padded winter coats, spare helmets, sacks filled with snow to simulate body mass. From a distance, they looked real. At 1640, the Soviets placed 12 of these silhouettes across the forest corridor, spaced in irregular intervals to mimic actual advancing infantry. Each decoy was wired to a thin pull string, allowing a soldier far behind the line to move them slightly, imitating human motion. Step 2. Controlled advance. Behind the decoys, 2 Soviet sharpshooters positioned themselves low in the brush, waiting for the German sniper to fire. The Soviets expected a shot within minutes, but none came. The corridor remained silent. At 1646, they moved the silhouettes again. Still nothing. Schützeke's observation discipline. From his secondary tree, the German sniper noticed immediately that movement was too uniform. Silhouettes lacked natural weight shift. No breath vapor escaped any soldier in the cold air. No sound accompanied their steps. He refused to fire. Not a single shot. He understood what this was. Step 3. Soviet adjustment. The Soviets attempted to increase realism by making a decoy fall over, as if slipping on snow. Another decoy crouched. Still no reaction from the sniper. The sharpshooter Bredov whispered to his spotter, "He's watching. He knows." Step 4. Real infantry behind fake ones. Realizing the decoys alone wouldn't work, Soviet commanders advanced an actual infantry squad behind the silhouettes. Their hope: the sniper might fire at real movement hidden among the false ones. The German sniper waited. He followed the deeper footprints behind the silhouettes. He watched for breathing, gear sway, rifle tilt. Then he saw a soldier adjusting the sling on his Mosin Nagant. A small, natural movement no wooden decoy could replicate. 17-3. The sniper's counteraction. A single, precise shot. The real soldier fell forward immediately. Chaos erupted. The decoys remained standing, but the real squad scattered. The sharpshooters sprinted backward, unable to find the muzzle flash in the dim forest light. But the sniper wasn't done. As Soviet infantry retreated, he fired a second shot, hitting another soldier attempting to drag a wounded comrade. The Soviets aborted the decoy offensive entirely. The Soviet conclusion. Their after-action report summarized the failure. Enemy sniper demonstrates superior discipline, does not fire at decoys, identifies real targets instantly, countermeasures ineffective. The forest corridor remained under German control, and Soviet morale, especially among forward infantry, began to deteriorate. Whispers spread that the sniper could see everything, day or night, decoy or real soldier. They weren't far from the truth. By February 5, the Soviet 11th Guards Division reached a critical point. Every direct approach toward the forest corridor had failed. Counter-sniper teams, night infiltration, artillery suppression, decoy assault. Nothing worked. The sniper's firing zone had effectively become a one-man anti-division barrier. Soviet headquarters decided on the most complex option, full encirclement of the sniper's sector, isolating him from all sides to force surrender or elimination. This was no small task. Encirclement required multiple platoons, accurate mapping of the terrain and silent movement, coordination through forest, swamp, and snow. But the division believed one thing strongly. No sniper can cover 360 degrees. They were about to test that assumption. In close. Phase 1. Soviet flanking columns move out. At 9:10, 3 Soviet groups began moving. 1. Left flank column. 22 men. Task. Approach from the northwest using dense spruce cover. 2. Right flank column. 18 men. Right flank column. Task. Approach from the east ridge using higher ground. 3. Rear encirclement group. 14 men. Task. Reach the sniper's rear access path and cut off retreat. The plan was to collapse all 3 groups toward a single point. If they had coordinated perfectly, it might have succeeded. They did not. If they is workin', Phase 2, terrain begins to break coordination. The Soviet left column moved too quickly, reaching their initial waypoint early. The right column lagged behind due to deep snow and fallen branches. The rear group became partially disoriented. Their compasses behaved poorly around a small iron deposit in the soil, a detail Soviet scouts hadn't anticipated. Distances widened. Synchronization broke down. Small failures, but critical. If you are SO sub you other dud. Phase 3. The sniper reacts. Shutsuke, still in his secondary tree, spotted unusual movement deep on the western side. Not in the corridor, but behind it. An encirclement attempt. He did not panic. He adjusted. To counter a multi-direction approach, he needed maximum visibility, higher elevation, deeper angle coverage. He moved to his tertiary firing point, a narrow but higher branch cluster he had prepared but never used. From here, he could observe nearly 140 degrees of forest. Not full coverage, but enough. 100 this. Phase 4. Contact on the western side. At 9:44, the sniper took his first shot of the day. A Soviet scout on the left flank collapsed instantly. This stopped the entire left column. They believed they had been detected too early, which was correct. Instead of pushing forward aggressively as planned, they dropped into defensive positions. The encirclement collapsed at the first point of contact. The Soviets did not know this yet, but the operation was now doomed. Anytime. Phase 5. The right flank walks into a sound trap. As the left flank stalled, the right flank unknowingly stepped across a brittle patch of frozen grass. The crunch echoed through the trees. Shutsuke rotated his rifle and visualized the likely approach path. He waited for confirmation. A single soldier shifted his rifle on his shoulder. The sniper fired. Hit. The right flank scattered, also dropping into cover. Now 2 columns were pinned, not advancing, not completing the encirclement. Nest. Phase 6. The rear group reaches the wrong position. The rear group, still partially disoriented, arrived 70 meters off their planned route, stopping near a low, marshy patch. They were too far to cut off retreat. Worse, they believed they were hidden. The sniper spotted a faint glint metal reflecting daylight, likely a canteen or bayonet mount. He fired another controlled shot. The rear group froze. They were supposed to complete the encirclement. Now they were lying flat, unable to move. Is what of that presented of betters? The Soviet final realization. By 10:20, all 3 groups had stalled. Not one had reached the designated convergence point. The encirclement failed before it fully began. Their report delivered later that day was short, but telling. Enemy sniper detects flanking movements with unknown method. Encirclement impossible under current conditions. In other words, one man dismantled a division-level maneuver. By February 6, the situation along the forest corridor had shifted from a tactical challenge to a psychological crisis. The sniper was no longer just delaying the advance. He was eroding the morale of an entire Soviet division. Signs of breakdown began to appear. In the 11th Guards Division's forward companies, soldiers began reporting experiences that weren't tactical, but emotional. He shoots before we even see movement. He knows where we crawl. He hits the man who speaks, even whispering. These weren't exaggerations. They were accurate observations interpreted as something more. Supernatural precision. Rumors spread quickly. Rumor 1. The sniper could see through trees. Several Soviet soldiers insisted the sniper had forest vision, claiming he could identify targets even when visibility was near zero. This stemmed from his technique of waiting for micro-movements, rifle sway, breath vapor, or small shifts in posture. To infantrymen under stress, it felt impossible. Rumor 2. He used captured Soviet optics. Some believed he used a rare PE or PU Soviet sniper scope, known for excellent light-gathering capability. But the sniper used a standard German ZF-39. Still, the rumor persisted. Rumor 3. He is not one man. A group of riflemen reported hearing shots from different angles. They assumed multiple snipers. In reality, Schütze K simply shifted between 3 firing notches within the same tree cluster. To soldiers pinned under fire, it felt like a team. The fear response intensifies. At dawn on February 6, a Soviet platoon was ordered to probe the corridor lightly, not a full attack, just movement to assess sniper activity. Not one soldier wanted to step forward. A junior lieutenant noted, "Men hesitate, freeze, look into the canopy before moving." A sign of sniper-induced paralysis. The sniper's own behavior feeds the fear. Schütze K fired only when necessary, never wasting rounds. The intervals were long, unpredictable. This unpredictability was devastating psychologically. A Soviet infantryman later recalled, "We feared silence more than shooting." Incidents of breakdown. By noon, 3 critical morale failures were recorded. 1. A Soviet squad refused to advance until artillery fired again. Even though the artillery the previous day had done nothing, they demanded it to keep the sniper's head down. 2. A machine gun team abandoned their position after hearing a single twig break. They believed it was the sniper preparing to fire. 3. One soldier accused his comrades of revealing their position and refused to move with them. Internal distrust spread another classic effect of sniper pressure. Command level concerned. Soviet officers noted in their internal file, enemy sniper causing operational hesitation and delay. Forward infantry, reluctant to maneuver. Kill zone perceived wider than actual. This line was crucial, perceived wider than actual. The sniper physically controlled maybe 200 meters of forest, but mentally, he controlled the entire sector. Quiet as day. Worst psychological impact. On February 6, Schütze K fired only 4 shots. 4 shots. Yet the Soviets halted nearly all movement in the corridor. No advance, no probing, no scouting. A whole day lost. Without firing more than a handful of rounds, the sniper accomplished what artillery and defensive fortifications often failed to do. He paralyzed an entire division. By the morning of February 7, the situation had become untenable for the Soviet 11th Guards Division. 2 full days of repeated delays, hesitations, and losses had turned one narrow forest corridor into a symbol of fear, and that fear had a single source: the unseen German sniper. Commanders issued a new order: clear the corridor today, no matter the cost. They couldn't afford another stalled advance. And he bred my Cruisins. A new strategy. Overwhelming force. The Soviets shifted tactics. Instead of small reconnaissance groups, they prepared to push forward with overwhelming numbers, nearly 200 men advancing in staggered lines. The theory was simple. He can't shoot all of us. But the fear in the ranks remained. Even before the first movement, soldiers whispered, "He's waiting. He knows we're coming." And they were right. Wills, the sniper's situation. Hidden deep in the trees, Shutsuke knew the end was coming. He had 7 rounds left. A damaged scope, the glass had hairline cracks from yesterday's shell shock, numb hands from 40 hours in freezing temperatures, and Soviet scouts closing in from the east. His mission was no longer to delay. It was now to escape, or at least stall the Soviets long enough for German forces to reorganize behind him. He repositioned one last time to the highest point in the tree cluster, giving him a narrow view of the clearing that the Soviets had to cross. To Avriel, the advance begins. At 10:22 a.m., the first Soviet line stepped out. Slow, hesitant, eyes everywhere, except forward. They expected a shot, but none came. The sniper waited. A silent 40 seconds passed. Then, the critical moment. A Soviet lieutenant stepped into the corridor, raised his hand, and signaled the entire company to advance together. This was the moment Shutsuke had been waiting for. He exhaled, a steady, calm breath. Then, crack, one shot. The lieutenant fell instantly. But what mattered wasn't the kill. It was the effect. In Minus and Master, the collapse of the advance. The reaction was immediate. The men behind him froze. The second line dropped to the ground. The third line began shouting contradictory orders. Panic spread in 5 seconds. Then the madness. Some soldiers crawled backward. Some ran sideways into the trees. A machine gunner abandoned his weapon. A platoon leader screamed for smoke, but none was ready. Several soldiers fired randomly into the forest, all from one single shot. The Soviet advance collapsed before it even started. And Atipli, the sniper's final engagement. But now, the Soviets knew his general direction. Grenades detonated in the trees. Tracer fire sliced through branches. A storm of bullets ripped apart his hide. Yet Shutsuke stayed calm. He took one more shot, his last precise one, and disabled the machine gun being brought forward to suppress him. This single action blocked the Soviet ability to saturate the upper canopy with fire. But the forest around him was disintegrating. He had no escape route. A Soviet submachine gunner finally spotted movement in the branches and sprayed the area. The sniper fell from his perch, fatally wounded. He died before hitting the ground. Reddit Braze. Aftermath. The legend begins. It took Soviet soldiers over an hour to secure the small patch of forest. Many refused to enter until officers ordered them at gunpoint. They expected to find a team of snipers, or at least an elaborate fortified position. Instead, they found one rifle, a single bedroll less, 23 empty shell casings, and a diary page with coordinates and timing notes. Only one man who stalled an entire division for 3 days. Word about the sniper circulated through Soviet units for weeks. To some, he was a ghost. To others, a demon. To many, he was proof of the brutal unpredictability of the Eastern Front. To military historians, he would become a case study, how a single sniper changed the tempo of a division-sized operation.